Since Halloween is drawing near, and spooky season is soon upon us, I figured I would celebrate with a video on one of the more unsettling parts of pirate life. Their black flag, the skull and bones, the Jolly Roger. This flag is the most recognized pirate icon, but it is perhaps their greatest mystery. Where did the pirates get their icons? Who invented the Jolly Roger, and just who was Roger? These questions will all be revealed as we creep into the spooky mystery of the Jolly Roger. If you ever saw this flag at sea, yeah, you knew you were screwed. Today, the black flag might seem like a silly thing, but to people in the 1700s, its meaning was far more severe. This was the flag of pirates. It meant robbery, torture, rape and murder. The psychological experience of seeing this flag would have been comparable to people today seeing the swastika. When sailing around, most ships wouldn't fly any flag. The weather would tear and wear them down over time. Flags were expensive and only hoisted on special occasion or when seeking contact with another ship. No one really took flags seriously, since it was so easy to just hide your allegiance by flying a fake flag. Everyone used fake flags, and you couldn't trust anyone at any point. The black flag was the only one you could trust for certain. Being a pirate was the worst crime in the book, so hoisting it was a death sentence. They belonged to no nation and had no laws to abide by. Privateers had to respect their prisoners, even when they put up a fierce resistance. If someone resisted pirates, there was nothing forbidding them from murdering everyone. When the pirates were sufficiently close, they fired a warning shot and hoisted a black flag. This was the pirates telling you that if you don't surrender, bad things will happen. But there were benefits of surrendering peacefully to pirates specifically. If you were caught by privateers, they would take your ship and put it on auction. All your goods would be confiscated and you'd be thrown in prison and forced to pay a large ransom. But pirates couldn't do any of this, since they lacked a home port and any legal backing. Most ships captured by pirates only lost a few of their most valuable possessions, often just a few life necessities like food, drink and materials. And pirates had no other way to resupply but to steal. In some cases, the pirates would even reward you for surrendering peacefully. Even though Lawrence Prince lost his ship to Samuel Bellamy, Bellamy gave Lawrence his old ship and even paid him a compensation. Of course, pirate behavior was erratic and depended on the crew's personality. Howell Davis and Edward England would forgive crews that fought back, whereas Ned Lowe just tortured whoever he felt like. But the aforementioned serves as a rule of thumb. If the ship didn't surrender to the black flag, the pirates would hoist a red flag, known as the Bloody Red. This flag meant that no quarter would be given. Everyone would be killed indiscriminately. According to the pirate code of John Thomas Delane, no quarter would only be given if the enemy fired 3 or more warning shots after the red flag had been raised. So as a summary, the black flag went up along with a warning shot and meant, surrender now or we give no quarter. If the enemy refused, the red flag went up, meaning, too late, now we'll show no mercy. But what did the black flag actually mean? Let's start out with the symbols themselves. Most of them were symbols of death. These included skulls, bones and skeletons. These have been associated with death since forever. Some people say that pirates got their skull and bones from Jewish tombstones on Jamaica, which is oddly specific, considering that such symbols were used on all tombstones across Europe since the Middle Ages. Icons of death were found elsewhere too. Chapbooks were a type of short, printed books, cheap and available to the lower classes, including potential pirates. The written content included everything from almanacs to ballads, and they often contained woodcut illustrations like this one, depicting death and an angel. This ticket is an invitation to a funeral that took place on the 13th of January, 1702. It features symbols all found on pirate flags: skull and bones, skeletons, trumpets, and hourglasses. The hourglass signified that time was running out and that death was close. I even found one on a tombstone in my local church here in Sweden. Eyewitness descriptions of pirate flags typically refer to the skull and bones as a death's head. Historians and artists today are uncertain if this referred to just a skull or a skull and bones. Since some descriptions specify the bones, death's head might have meant just a skull. But again, take this with a pinch of salt, we really don't know. Full skeletons seem to have been as common as just skulls. Oftentimes they were carrying out gruesome deeds of murder, like stabbing a heart with a spear. We often envision the character of Death wearing a hood and reaping dead souls with a scythe. In the 1700s, they imagined Death as a skeleton that carried off a mortal by piercing their heart. Other implements of murder were featured too. There have been pirate flags with arrows, swords, even pistols, cannons and a powder horn, though it might have been a calling horn. Some pirate flags, like this one belonging to Samuel Bellamy, featured trumpets. An arm holding a sword has been a popular motif on pirate flags. According to pop history, Red Sea pirate Thomas II used a black field with a sword arm, but it cannot be corroborated by period sources, and is likely a modern fabrication. However, the sword arm was used by Dutch navymen, buccaneers Edmund Cook and Edward Davis, and pirate captain Bartholomew Roberts. There is a popular belief that individual pirate captains designed their own black flags as a calling card of sorts. That way, sailors would notice the flag, associate them with a certain reputation, and surrender more easily. This might have been done for that purpose in a few cases, but doesn't seem like it was the norm, and has never really been mentioned by period sources. Most pirates just reused the same designs. Bartholomew Roberts is often recognized for designing a lot of unique flags, but eyewitnesses only ever described him as using two black flags. One was unique, the other was just a skeleton on a black field, which was used by a lot of pirates. In a similar vein, the basic black flag with the death's head was used by a lot of famous captains, like Sam Bellamy, Charles Vane, and Blackbeard. Other flags did not use symbols of death at all. Several pirate flags have been described as just featuring regular guys holding swords or pistols. Maybe the pirates were too lazy to draw the details of a skeleton, or the details couldn't be seen from a distance. William Bethea wrote how the flag of the Holy Roman Empire, a black eagle spreading its wings over yellow ground, could be mistaken for a black skeleton. He claims that his captain was well aware of this, and used that flag to make ships surrender more easily.
This is illegal, you know.
Indeed, symbols were arguably not the important part, rather the color itself. A poem published in 1702 described how Charon, the ferryman of the river Styx in the underworld, flew a sable flag with a death's head and marrow bones. Black was the color of death and mourning. Neither was it used by any nation, so it was clear as day who you belonged to, the nihilistic and suicidal cause of piracy. Thus, the black had the purpose of giving pirates an identity and strengthening their internal bonds. When they hoisted their black flag, it was accompanied by cheers and the firing of guns, like any patriotic ceremony. The color black was likewise that of defiance. In 1714, a group of Catalonian rebels hoisted a black flag with a death's head, to show that they would fight to the death. This feeling of being besieged on all fronts was part of the pirates' mentality. The maritime laws of the time called them hostis humani generis, enemy of all mankind. The only problem is that the color black was expensive and hard to acquire. No wonder that pirates took such pride in them. It is often mentioned that pirate flags were made from silk. If pure black couldn't be acquired, pirates used cheaper substitutes. Eyewitnesses disagree whether the flag of Charles Harris was black or actually a dark blue. Pirates such as Harris used cheaper colors like dark blue, brown or grey. According to legend, Howell Davis even hoisted a dirty tarpaulin as a black flag. On rare occasions, other colors were used. Several French pirates used white flags with black motifs, like skeletons and death's heads. In the 1680s, English buccaneer Edward Davis operated under a French commission and used a white flag with a black arm holding a sword. Since the white flag was the flag of France, this was likely done to show their national allegiance. I always thought that pirates throughout time used it, but the black flag with the skull and bones only appeared first in the year 1700, when French pirate Emmanuel Wynne flew a sable ensign with crossed bones, a death's head, and an hourglass. We don't know exactly when black and bones became associated with pirates. After Emmanuel Wynne first flew it in 1700, there was an absence of black flags until around 1716 and the end of the war. Many privateers resorted to piracy to keep up their old way of life, and could no longer rely on their national colors to make the old enemy surrender. These former privateers operated out of New Providence Island in the Bahamas, and called themselves the Flying Gang. Since most of their captains used the same basic skull and bones, we can at least attribute its popularization to them. Pretty much all pirates after 1715 are connected in some way or another to the original Flying Gang, so the old guard were able to transmit their methods to the influx of new pirates. Even then, it is a meme that pirates were revolutionary anti-nationalists. They were more akin to skinhead biker gangs. Whilst they murdered and robbed from their own people, they still maintained a patriotic air and strong political leanings. The pirates of this era were overwhelmingly Jacobites, a political movement that wished to restore the deposed House of Stuart to the English throne. Charles Vane hoisted the old flag of England to show his defiance against Great Britain. Still, many pirates used the Union flag to show their nationality. When 3 pirate kings of Madagascar went to war around 1720, they flew not the black flag, but each his national colours, the English, Danish and Scottish. Some even modified their national flags. Jeremiah Coughlin flew a St. George's Cross with 4 balls in the quarter. One of Robert's ship flew, and Union flag emblazoned with 4 blazing balls. But despite their political leanings, some pirates paid respect to the death of King George by lowering their black flags to half-mast. Before the 1710s, the line between piracy and legal privateering was very, very thin. Most pirates got away with their crimes by only plundering from national enemies, even during times of peace. Buccaneers and filibusters used their national colours at sea. Many of their battles were fought on land, and some of their company banners have been documented. Basil Ringrose writes that Captain Sawkins flew a flag striped red and yellow, and that Edmund Cook had a variant with a hand holding a sword. Peter Harris flew 2 green flags, and Coxswain's a red flag. Bartholomew Sharp had a red flag with a bunch of white and green ribbons. Artists today disagree what that looked like. One proposal is that the ribbons were splashed in the corner. I propose that it was simply several stripes in the flag. I think the most likely idea is that the ribbons were attached to the end of the flag, like in this depiction. We don't know if these banners were ever used at sea. The first use of the skull and bones by pirates was actually on one of these land banners. In 1687, a group of French filibusters used it in Mexico, but against a red field, not black. Again, we don't know if it was ever used at sea. Whilst this is the first recorded use of pirates using the skull and bones, there are some interesting theories that claim an older usage. Ancient origins. For some reason, people are really fixated on flags, especially the ones which lack any evidence of actually having been used. Most of the famous pirate designs can't be traced earlier than like 1910. Flags like the Calico Jack, Blackbeard and Henry Avier designs cannot be corroborated by period sources.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it.
But a lot of people have some weird emotional attachment to these flags and get really uppity when you point out that there is no evidence of them being from the 18th century. Like, it's fine if you use these flags yourself, like put it on the sticker on your car or whatever, or hoist it over your computer screen, but just don't go and claim that any pirates actually use them. Like, they don't have to be historical for you to enjoy them. But yeah, there's a bunch of schizo theories as to the origin of the pirate flags. One of the milder ones is that the pirates got the skull from Barbary pirates, who allegedly flew it against a green flag, first in the early 1600s. An illustration from 1711 shows the Barbary flag as a red field, with an hourglass, an arm holding a sword, and a skull and bones. So it's not impossible that pirates got the idea from the Barbary coast. Then again, the symbols can be traced to other European sources. The sword arm was used on naval flags. The skull and bones was used by cavalry regiments as a symbol of terror. The worst is probably the fear that the skull and bone flags date to the Templar Knights. One theory says that a Templar fell in love with a woman who died, so he did it dirty with her corpse, and 9 months later the corpse birthed a skull. The skull was magical, and he used it as a banner on the battlefield. A connected theory says that the Templars fled to Scotland after having been persecuted in France. Them having a skull banner would be the reason why Scottish tombstones now have the skull and bones. Yeah. This one seems to have been invented by the Freemasons in an attempt to tie themselves to the Templars, but yeah. Another theory says that the skull and bones was used by King Roger of Sicily. The theory states that King Roger was a pirate, which he wasn't, nor is there any evidence that he used a black skull and bones flag. Another thing which was made up. As you might know, the black flag is often called Jolly Roger. This raises the question, just who is Roger? The Templar theory says that it's named after King Roger of Sicily, and the name Jolly Roger appeared first in the 1720s, which was like the literal last years of the golden age of piracy, and I really don't think a bunch of 18th century drunken pirates would have named their flag after an obscure medieval king that didn't fly the flag and wasn't a pirate. But the question remains, who was Roger? The first use of the skull and bones by European sea rovers was the red filibuster flag from 1687. One of the most popular theories is that the name Jolly Roger is a corruption of the French word Jolly Rouge, meaning pretty red. The theory goes that this was the name used for the 1687 banner, or just red flags in general, and that name would later be used for the black variants. The only connection is that those filibusters were French, and that Emmanuel Wynne, the first documented user of the black pirate flag, was also French. That's it, and it's shaky. According to period sources, Frenchmen called the red flag the Pavillon Rouge, or the Pavillon sans quartier, meaning red flags and flag of no quarter. The name Jolly Rouge for a flag seems to stem from the 1848 French Revolution, which was over a century after the end of the Golden Age. So yeah, please stop spreading this meme. Even worse is the idea that the Jolly Roger was named after a Hindu pirate named Ali Raja. Ali Raja, Jolly Roger. Okay. Now, Europeans and pirates didn't have a habit of naming things after Hindus. Neither was there ever a famous pirate called Ali Raja. Now we can finally get into the fun theories. One theory is that the flag was named after Governor Woodes Rogers, the man largely responsible for ending Caribbean piracy, and their worst enemy. Charles Johnson writes in A General History that the crew of Howell Davis nicknamed him Johnny Rogers. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Johnny was a humorous or derogatory term for a person. According to Johnson, Johnny Rogers was likewise what they called their flag. According to various sources, the name Jolly Roger was first used by the crew of Bartholomew Roberts, who superseded Howell Davis. Maybe Johnny Rogers was a misprint in the book, or the crew had changed the name over time. Jolly was a rather obvious addition, skulls only have one expression, that being a toothy grin. Roger can mean several things. It could mean a rogue, a vagabond, or a beggar. According to one newspaper, Charles Harris called his black flag Old Roger. This was a nickname for the devil, and certainly befitting the pirate's diabolical intentions. Another meaning of Roger was penis, and the masculine act of penetrative sex. You'd Roger someone. Roger that. Pirates were certainly known for their crude language and humor. Since the flag was an important part of their internal identities, the name was likely a funny inside joke. Maybe they wanted to say that Woodes Roger was the devil, or that he was a dick. Big thanks to my generous supporters over on Patreon. Cole Freer, Max Drake, 1660, Michaela Jans, Red Hate, Wagineer, Rachel, Lockgar, Dyer, Ted11, Flintlock, George Scott, and Part of Jesus. Don't forget to give the video a like and a comment to support the algorithm, and share the video with a friend. Cheers!